Hello, welcome back to another video. Welcome back to Sinister Saturday. Today is a story about, hold on, wait, no, I messed it up. Welcome, if you're new here, hi. If you've never tuned in, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for joining me on this Sinister Saturday. And as I was saying, today is a story about a model, a gruesome model. Not the type of model you think, but a model. We'll get into that. You'll see. Let's go. So, some people choose fame and others let it bleed into them. Courtney Clenney, better known by her digital alias, Courtney Tailor, was a kind of woman who looked like she came from a ring light at birth. To her followers, she was an OnlyFans success story, a 2 million follower influencer, and a cameo in G-Eazy's Me, Myself, and I. To anyone keeping score, that translated into over 3 million in 2 years. Most of it earned while posing artfully near windows and mirrors. In April of 2022, she became something less photogenic, a murder defendant. Her boyfriend, Christian Obumseli, was found in their Miami high-rise apartment with a knife buried inches above the tattoo of her name. He bled out before help arrived, and she called it self-defense. The internet called it content. The story metasized online like black mold in a luxury condo. 4 months after the stabbing, Courtney was still posting on OnlyFans, reportedly earning $40,000 more. The public could not decide which detail offended them the most: that she killed him, or that she had profited afterwards, or that she had done both while still looking camera ready. OF model Courtney Clenney entered the world on April 21st, 1996, in Midland, Texas, oil country where the earth leaks ambition. She grew up in Austin, the land of breakfast tacos and delusion, and her parents, Kim and Deborah, were a small, comfortable unit. Kim worked in finance, which made him the family's calculator, and Deborah was her daughter's emotional on-call service. Courtney's young sister, Morgan, completed the picture. Courtney was the product of Texas wholesomeness, mudding on the weekends, Whataburger cravings at midnight, and the belief that a tan could fix anything. She was athletic to the point of obsession: gymnastics, soccer, volleyball, diving, horseback riding. Her family joked that she'd make the Olympics one day, until she decided that sharks lived in pools and quit diving altogether. High school punctured the fantasy. She felt isolated, bullied, alien in her own skin. Later, during a YouTube Q&A, she half-joked, "My hit list is long." It was said with a smile that didn't quite blink. She funneled her anger into fitness, counting macros and running from weakness like it owed her money. The gym became her chapel, mirrors her confessionals. At 18, she packed her ambitions and little else into a suitcase and fled to Los Angeles. She was done being sorority girl number 3. She wanted her own line on a call sheet. Hollywood obliged bravely. She appeared in small projects, Everybody Wants Some, American Psycho, and a Pepsi ad, and became a decorative blur in pop culture's background. Then, in 2015, Instagram started paying attention. A G-Eazy photographer saw her account and invited her to appear in a music video. 1 frame later, she was handing the rapper a cake while standing against the wall, becoming the internet's newest fixation. The video hit hundreds of millions of views. Followers poured in like insect towards light. Playboy noticed next, featuring her in pieces titled "Courtney Tailor is your typical girl next door." Her father reportedly discovered this the way most dads shouldn't: online. The label stuck. In the mid-2010s, Girl Next Door was America's fetish of choice: wholesome, blonde, patriotic, and mildly bored. Courtney sold it like it was a registered trademark. She learned the formula: post every day, post a little more skin, pretend it's empowerment. Between 2015 and 2017, she became fluent in monetized intimacy. She started a YouTube channel about fitness, routines, and healthy habits. The content was bright, earnest, and painfully symmetrical. Behind the dumbbells and detox smoothies, Courtney spoke occasionally of pain. She admired Oprah Winfrey, citing her struggles as inspirations and implying she'd endured similar ones. Viewers speculated about childhood trauma. She didn't confirm or deny. The internet filled the silence, as it always does. By her late teens, she had cosmetic surgery and fully entered the bodybuilding world. She earned certifications as a personal trainer in 2017 and began offering online coaching. Her idols were Shark Tank's Lori Greiner, Barbara Corcoran, and again, Oprah. Women who turned control into empire. Control was Courtney's chosen religion. She controlled her diet, her image, and her narrative. But control was a tragic flaw. It never tolerates equals. Change of shirt. It got super hot, and for no reason, I just basically got a hot flash, so I had to go change out of the sweater I was wearing. Anyways, continuing on. Control was Courtney's chosen religion. She controlled her diet, her image, her narrative, but control has a tragic flaw. It never tolerates equals. Somewhere between selfies and sponsorships, Courtney became bolder, brasher, and less apologetic. In a podcast titled We in Miami, she declared, "I only like rich black guys." The quote detonated predictably across comment sections. Critics called it fetishization, and fans called it preference. But she called it honesty. She described herself as submissive in bed, but resistant to male authority elsewhere, a self-diagnosed paradox. She flaunted the numbers 3 million in 2 years on OnlyFans alone. Feminists argued. Men's rights podcasters hyperventilated. Courtney, ever pragmatic, cashed the checks. Her online persona evolved from wholesome to predatory. She thought she'd trade innocence for engagement. The edges hardened, the captions shortened. She was no longer pretending to be the girl next door. She was the woman who'd bought the neighborhood. In May of 2020, pandemic purgatory, Courtney met Christian Obumseli in Mexico. He was 2 years older, a former football player turned engineer from Plano, Texas. Friends described him as generous, ambitious, and hopelessly kind. The type who helped everyone until someone took advantage. Their connection was immediate, obsessive. Within a year, they moved in together in Austin. And for Courtney, it was a return to her roots. For Christian, it was the beginning of a slow disassembly. He told his traditional Nigerian-American parents that his girlfriend was an OnlyFans model. They accepted her because he did. Courtney's parents still thought that she was making her living through modeling. Quote unquote. Omission is a form of truth if you don't care who drowns in it. By 2021, the couple's relationship had achieved the visibility of a car crash. Friends described constant fighting, explosive, public, impossible to ignore. They were the kind of pair who would ruin a brunch just by showing up. Their fights had rhythm: love, rage, apology, repeat. Toxicity dressed as devotion. Courtney's temper became its own ecosystem, one that Christian kept trying to survive in. In July of 2021, they went to Las Vegas, sun, alcohol, and matching tattoos, a doomed trifecta. What began as a trip to recharge dissolved into a police report. According to body cam footage, the Cosmopolitan hotel room was chaos. Food thrown, chairs overturned, and clothes everywhere. Courtney admitted that she hurled a glass at Christian during an argument. He denied hurting her, and she was arrested for domestic battery and released 12 hours later. While being cuffed, she pleaded, "Can I get a hug for my boyfriend?" As though affection were a legal loophole, she told officers she'd withheld details to protect him. The gestures read less like devotion and more like control wearing lipstick. The moment documented, recorded, and eventually linked became the first entry in file-labored pattern. Courtney went to posting, Christian went back to forgiving, and the rest of us went back to scrolling, unaware that the algorithm was already counting down to a crime scene. After Las Vegas, the couple returned to Texas, pretending the city had swallowed their problems in neon. It hadn't, obviously. Vegas simply magnifies whatever you bring into it: greed, loneliness, volatility. Back home, Courtney and Christian resumed their routines: workouts, social media, makeups, stage-like apologies, and fights that sounded like weather warnings. Courtney posted motivational captions without discipline while throwing objects off camera. She mastered the art of performing stability for an audience while privately auditioning for a disaster. If hypocrisy could be monetized, she would have added another revenue stream. To the outside world, they were beautiful, successful, fit, and to friends, they were a human demolition derby. One day, affectionate, the next shouting. 1 hour, he was my love, and the next, he was a villain in a story that she hadn't finished writing. Toxic relationships often feel cinematic to those inside of them. To everyone else, they're just exhausting. The July 2021 incident should have been a wake-up call, but instead, it became precedent. Courtney's arrest didn't end the relationship, it rescripted it. Police had separated them for 12 hours, but the emotional leash held firm. By fall, they were fighting in public again. Restaurants, lobbies, elevators, and the pattern was simple. She lashed out, he apologized, and somewhere between the bruises and the apologies, they convinced themselves it was love. In the text messages later recovered, Christian wrote, "I'm guilty of not loving you like the beginning. I'm guilty of making you not love yourself, and I'm guilty of gaslighting you." He seemed to believe the violence was his fault. It's common among victims. If you can't control your partner, you can try to control your own guilt. Courtney's behavior oscillated between rage and remorse. She'd cry, promise therapy, and then, within days, explode again. The cycle spun like a washing machine stuck on delicate, slowly grinding both of them down. In October of 2021, another argument escalated beyond metaphor. Courtney suspected Christian was cheating, and in the aftermath, he texted her, "Yesterday, when you stabbed me in the leg, you saw how bad it was. I couldn't even walk. You said, I wish I could take your pain away. Then the next morning, I still woke up happy and tried to give you a good day." She didn't deny it. The message existed, preserved like a confession disguised as concern. After that incident, he, for some odd reason, had her name tattooed across his chest, above the wound line, almost prophetically. Survivors of abuse often mistake proximity for safety. Christian may have believed that binding himself to her physically would calm her. It didn't. Courtney, meanwhile, posted TikToks joking about ignoring red flags. One featured her dancing it with the caption, "Him showing me 100 red flags and me ... followed by a smile and a tongue out. It was meant to be ironic. Irony is a poor defense against knives. By early 2022, they moved to Miami, a city that rewards spectacle and punishes sincerity. They chose a 22nd floor condo with a private elevator and a panoramic view of Biscayne Bay. It cost $10,000 a month, an expensive stage for a dying romance. Courtney justified the price as a work necessity. "The view keeps me calm," she told friends. The view did not keep her calm. Neighbors soon learned their name through the walls. Screams, crashes, slammed doors, domestic unrest turned into a nightly soundtrack, and several times building staff intervened. One neighbor filmed them in a common area. Courtney appeared drunk, shouting and gesturing wildly. Christian, bleeding from his face, tried to calm her. Later, in a text, he listed his injuries. "Now I have a lump. I'm bleeding, throwing up, mild concussion, anxiety, slept in the restroom." Her reply, "Sorry for hitting you in the face and spitting on you. You just pissed me off. But I still love you." What? Excuse me? Like, I still love you after I abuse you. It read like a Valentine from a guillotine. On February 1st of 2022, they argued again, this time in one of the building's public lounges. Witnesses saw her strike him. Security footage later confirmed it. Christian ended the night in the hospital with deep cuts on his face. This girl's very abusive. Oh my gosh. Courtney texted him afterwards, always coming in with a text. "Hopefully this will give you time to think about your actions. Enjoy your time at the hospital." Bro, couples like this like genuinely baffle me and confuse me and make my brain hurt. It's like, obviously, if you realize that your relationship's not going very well, I don't know. I'm not even gonna put my opinion out there, because obviously some people don't have the brain capacity to think through it, and I don't know. Anyways, she followed that with a longer apology once the adrenaline faded. "I love you so much. I should have been there with you. I feel extreme sadness, regret, humiliation." Abusers often use remorse as currency. They spend it lavishly to buy another chance. Christian took it. He went home, stitched and silent. But something changed. He began recording their fights, not publicly, not to humiliate her, but to document what he could no longer explain. The audio files became his invisible diary, proof for a future he would never live to see. So, The first recording surfaced from February 2022. They had been out with friends, Courtney clashed with someone, and Christian sided with the other party. The recording begins in mid-argument, her voice sharp as glass. "You never protect me. Someone horrible to me and you defend them." He pleads calm but strained. "Please, baby, get in the car." Her screams escalate into incoherence. She runs off. A bystander asks, "Are you guys in a relationship?" Christian answers yes. Courtney shouts, "Not anymore." I doubt that. The bystander tells him softly, "Bro, this ain't normal." He doesn't respond. He chases her instead. This is what I'm talking about some people lack the decency just to use their brain. Anyways, if somebody's telling you to, like, this ain't normal, if it's not normal, it's not normal. Stop it. But no, he's gonna go chase her, so just let him do that. Anyways, that instinct to chase, to calm, to fix would later cost him his life. The recording captures slaps, apologies, and threats tangled together like barbed wire. She accuses him of abandoning her dog in the car and hits him again, and he whispers, "Stop hitting me, please." From a distance, it sounds like despair learning to speak in lowercase. A few weeks later, on February 21st, 2022 again, cameras in their building recorded the now infamous elevator incident. The footage begins with her pressing the floor button. When Christian steps inside, she attacks, slapping, shoving, and clawing. He raises his arm defensively, never striking back until he restrains her briefly to stop the blows. She twists, yells, and resumes hitting. By April of 2022, once again, neighbors thought things had quieted down. The fights were less frequent or just simply muffled better. Online, Courtney smiled into her phone, answering fan questions about fitness, future goals, and motherhood? "I hope to have at least one kid by then," she said on an Instagram live. Hours later, Christian would be dead. April 3rd of 2022, once again. As you can see, all of this happened in 2022. Miami, Florida, where the skyline gleams like a row of teeth. And everyone's smiling for a reason. In apartment 2201 of the One Paraiso building, the illusion of peace lasted exactly as long as Courtney Clenney's attention span. She spent the morning doing laundry, watching true crime on YouTube, hey, a grim sort of foreshadowing, and chatting with fans on Instagram Live. Her voice was bright, her posture casual. When asked about her 5-year plan, she smiled and said she hoped to have a child by then. I don't think she needs a child. It was the kind of answer that sounds soft until you know the ending. Across the city, Christian Obumseli was walking home from Subway, carrying sandwiches for them both. The elevator doors to their unit opened directly into their apartment, a luxury that would turn fatal. As he stepped out, he heard screaming. It was similar. Within the hour, he would be bleeding out on the marble floor, a kitchen knife buried inches above the tattoo that read Courtney. At 4:57 p.m., Courtney dialed 911. The operator's audio would later become evidence, a grim duet of panic and denial. Courtney sobbed that her boyfriend was dying of a stab wound, insisting it was an accident, and in the background, Christian's voice could be heard faintly gasping, "I'm dying, I can't feel my arm." When first responders arrived, she was drenched in blood, his, not hers. She was cradling him, performing the kind of grief that would later be scrutinized frame by frame. He was rushed to Jackson Memorial Hospital, but the wound was deep, precise, and terminal. He was pronounced dead shortly after arrival. Courtney told the police that it was self-defense. She claimed Christian had grabbed her by the throat and she'd thrown a knife in desperation, that it struck him accidentally, and quietly filed that under unlikely. There was no defensive wounds on her. A blood pattern suggested proximity, not distance. Thrown knives don't bury themselves 4 inches deep into the chest of a 6-foot-tall man. They fall, they nick, and they bruise. This one punctured an artery. The apartment told its own story. Blood spattered near the kitchen island, droplets arcing toward the living room, and a knife handle slick with fingerprints. Hers, obviously. Police noted the disarray, but not the signs of struggle Courtney insisted on. The building's security cameras had caught earlier footage, Courtney pacing in the hallway and re-entering the apartment moments before the stabbing. No one else entered or left. When questioned, she cycled through explanations like outfits, accident, self-defense, overreaction, and misunderstanding. She also said that she couldn't remember certain details, which was convenient. Memory, like truth, tends to vanish when inconvenient. Christian's phone told a steadier version. Text, photos, recordings, all indicating months of abuse. Police seized it along with hers. Both devices were heavy with evidence. Only one of their owners would ever speak again. As news broke, so did Courtney's composure. In the following days, she was seen drinking at a hotel bar in Hawaii, smiling for selfies, and it's unclear whether she was grieving or celebrating or simply continuing the performance. Social media rarely distinguishes. A witness at the bar later told police that she had seemed unbothered. When confronted about her optics, she was photographed drinking Mai Tais while under investigation with murder. Her lawyer replied that she was in trauma therapy. That may be true, but therapy usually involves tequila. The public response was immediate and polarized. To her followers, she was a wronged woman, a pretty blonde in distress. To Christian's family, she was a killer, hiding behind contour and privilege. The internet splits into camps, each with hashtags and moral outrage. People forget that outrage, too, is a performance art. Christian's family refused to let the narrative be reduced to a tabloid pulp. His cousin wrote online, "We will not let his story be rewritten as a man who deserved it." His parents described him as gentle, patient, and forgiving to a fault. Forgiveness had in fact been his last fatal habit. He'd forgiven her through the bruises, stitches, and slaps caught on audio. He forgave until his heart stopped forgiving altogether. The family set up a GoFundMe, citing not just the cost of a burial, but the indignity of watching his name trend alongside his killer's bikini photos. It raised thousands, not enough to balance the ledger. For months, Courtney walked free. Prosecutors called it an ongoing investigation. Internet sleuths called it favoritism. The footage, the text, and the recordings all sat in evidence boxes while she posted selfies captioned with inspirational quotes. Then, in August 2022, 4 months after the stabbing, the Miami-Dade state attorney charged her with second-degree murder with a deadly weapon. She was arrested in Hawaii, where she claimed to be seeking treatment for post-traumatic stress. The arrest video shows her in sweatpants, visibly thinner, eyes darting, not frightened so much as inconvenienced. The officers informed her of the warrant, and she blinked once and asked, "Is it for murder?" It was. The case detonated across media outlets. Some branded her the OnlyFans Killer, others debated whether the relationship had been mutually abusive, a convenient gray area that absolves everyone of choosing a side. Commentators like Julia Fox, the actress briefly linked to Kanye West, posted online defending Courtney as a possible victim of domestic violence. The backlash was swift. Public sympathy is rationed. Courtney has already used hers up. Prosecutors described her as the primary aggressor in a relationship marked by manipulation and violence. The elevator video became Exhibit A, the stabbing Exhibit B, and the text Exhibit C through Z. Her defense team leaned hard into self-defense, insisting Christian had pinned her down as she acted in panic. But even panic has geometry. A knife to the chest requires aim. Investigators compiled a timeline. In July 2021, domestic battery arrest in Las Vegas. No charges were filed. October 2021, stabbing incident in the leg, documented via text. February 1st of 2022, physical altercation, Christian hospitalized. February 21st of 2022, elevator assault captured on video. And April 3rd, 2022, fatal stabbing. It's less a relationship history than a countdown. The medical examiner confirmed Christian's cause of death as a single stab wound in the chest, penetrating his subclavian artery. He likely bled out within minutes. Courtney's version of thrown in self-defense didn't fit the physics nor the angle. Toxicology tests showed that Christian had no substance in his system. Courtney's results were sealed. The unspoken implication was that she had been drinking, and she often was. Even after the arrest, Courtney's digital footprint refused to die. Old clips resurfaced, gym tutorials, makeup videos, Q&As about healthy love, and they aged poorly. Her OnlyFans account was eventually deactivated, though not before the internet screenshot everything. They can delete a platform, but not an algorithm. Meanwhile, fans and critics dissected her body language from police interviews, diagnosing guilt and innocence by the angle of her chin. She cried at the right moments, smiled at the wrong ones, and somewhere a million strangers decided they understood trauma better than people living it. The case somehow remains unresolved. I think I could tell you what happened. No verdict, no closure. The defense continues to insist that she's misunderstood, a victim of her own survival instinct. The prosecution counters that Christian's final moments, caught in blood and audio, don't lie. In the end, this isn't a story about influencers or algorithms. It's about two people locked in a luxury apartment, mistaking obsession for love, until one of them proved it with a blade. The tragedy isn't that it ended violently. The tragedy is that everyone saw it coming and kept watching anyways. In the aftermath of the killing, silence becomes evidence. Courtney Clenney's apartment at 1 Paraiso turned into a crime scene before the blood even dried. Police sealed off the 22nd floor, cataloging fragments of what was once luxury living: an overturned glass, a knife on the floor, and $10,000 worth of furniture that now smelled like iron. The media swarmed the building, but 4 forensics had finished their notes. Every headline carried the same irony: OnlyFans model charged in boyfriend's death. A grotesque little juxtaposition. The digital fantasy of seduction meeting the biological reality of violence. Courtney was detained for questioning but released within hours. Miami police said that they were gathering evidence. In translation, we don't know yet whether she's an influencer or an inmate. Between April and August 2022, Courtney lived as though crime were an optional side hustle. She traveled to Hawaii, supposedly for rehabilitation. Their photos surfaced of her paddleboarding, drinking cocktails, and smiling like someone whose worst problem was Wi-Fi speed. To the public, it looked like audacity. To investigators, it looked like arrogance. Her attorney, Fred Prieto, assured the press that Courtney was cooperating fully, and that she'd acted in self-defense after enduring a long pattern of abuse. He described Christian as the aggressor, controlling, threatening, emotionally volatile. The same defense had worked for a woman before. The difference was that this woman had a video catalog of her own aggression. Meanwhile, prosecutors were dissecting every bite of digital evidence: 911 audio, texts, voicemails, elevator footage, and Christian's pocket recordings. Together, they painted a portrait not of a victim, but of volatility with a marketing team. On August 10th of 2022, Hawaiian police arrived at the Rehabilitation Center for Trauma Recovery. Courtney had checked in under her legal name, her phone was still active, and her followers thought that she was on a mental health break. The arrest video later leaked online, a twisted celebrity unboxing. Courtney, barefoot, in sweatpants, stands frozen as officers tell her that there's a warrant for her arrest. "Is it for murder?" she asks, as if checking the flavor of the charge. The officer nods. She doesn't faint, she doesn't cry, she just exhales, like someone who's misplaced their passport. She was extradited to Miami, charges with second-degree murder with a deadly weapon, and booked into Miami-Dade County Jail. Bond was denied. Prosecutors called her a flight risk with resources and followers. Translation: she knows how to disappear and make it look like content. The state's case, led by Catherine Fernandez Rundle, was meticulous. She called the killing a tragedy fueled by domestic violence, with the roles reversed. Rundle's team presented the jury of public with a grim timeline: the Las Vegas assault in July 2021, the leg stabbing in October 2021, the hospitalization in February 2022, the elevator attack in February 21 of 2022, and the fatal stabbing in April 3rd of 2022. Each incident documented escalation. Each bruise, each recording, another bead on a rosary of denial. They described Christian as a man trapped in an emotional chokehold, repeatedly forgiving, repeatedly hurt, until forgiveness failed to resuscitate him. The 911 call was the prosecution's crown jewel. The jury heard Courtney's voice tremble between hysteria and performance as she told dispatchers, "He's dying. Please hurry." In the background, Christian groaned, "I can't feel my arm." Then silence. Ronald's statement was almost clinical. The knife entered the chest with force, not accident. There was no struggle consistent with self-defense. The evidence shows intent, if not premeditation, then disregard. Courtney's attorney framed her as a woman cornered by an abusive partner, one who'd grabbed, hit, and psychologically manipulated her. They claimed that the elevator video, though damning, was a snapshot, not a full movie. They argued that Christian had been violent off camera and that Courtney's actions were reflexive. They leaned on psychology, trauma, and gender expectation. If she were a man, Prieto said, we'd call it defending yourself. It was a soundbite made for headlines, not Jerry's. What the defense couldn't explain were the physics. A knife doesn't fly 4 inches deep by accident. It was a chef's knife, 8 inches long, heavy steel. Stab wound was downward, angled, and consistent with proximity and force. The prosecution didn't need to prove premeditation. He only needed to prove indifference. And indifference in Courtney's world had an audience of millions. While the legal battle brewed, social media ran its own trial. Chaotic, relentless, and free of burden of proof. Hashtag Justice for Christian trended alongside hashtag Free Courtney. TikTok users reenacted the elevator fight with bad lighting and worse empathy. True crime podcasters released multi-part analysis within days, parsing every frame like theologians decoding scripture. Courtney's mugshot became a meme, and Christian's name became a hashtag. Together, they became clickbait currency, tragedy as entertainment. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. She'd built her empire on being seen, and now visibility might destroy her. Christian's brother, Jeffrey Obumseli, gave interviews that bordered on elegy. He loved her too much, he said. He wanted to fix her, and she killed him for it. Their mother, Karen, who could barely speak without shaking, they let her go home while my son went to the morgue, she told reporters. The family also accused law enforcement of racial bias, pointing out that if the roles were reversed, the arrest would have been immediate. It wasn't a baseless claim. The timeline speaks for itself. 4 months of freedom, 4 months of OnlyFans income, and 4 months of mourning for everyone else. Courtney's jailhouse communications revealed a woman oscillating between victimhood and vanity. She reportedly told friends that she was a survivor, then pivoted to complaining about bad lighting in her mugshot. The prosecution submitted evidence of previous text messages in which she threatened Christian. "You're lucky I haven't killed you yet. I'll stab you if you ever leave me." That should be clear evidence for y'all. Come on now. Her defense argued the messages were sarcasm. The jury raised its collective eyebrow. In psychiatric evaluations, Courtney was described as high-functioning, emotionally unstable, prone to dissociation. One expert compared her behavior to borderline personality disorder. The court didn't diagnose, it just recorded. By late 2022, the case had become cultural shorthand. The influencer who killed her boyfriend, the OnlyFans femme fatale, the blonde whose privilege bought her a 4-month grace period. Documentaries were pitched before indictments were printed. Her social accounts were scrubbed, archived, and privated. Yet the content lived on in reposts, clips, and forensics TikToks. The algorithm doesn't mourn, it recycles. When the hearings began, Courtney appeared in beige prison garb, her hair tied back, and the cameras caught everything, every blink, every tremor, and every calculated tear. At one pretrial hearing, she mouthed, "I love you," toward her parents in the audience. Her mother sobbed. Her father, the financial advisor, looked like a man who understood what bankruptcy of the soul feels like. The judge set a tentative trial date for 2025, citing backlog in pretrial motions. Until then, Courtney remained in custody, her OnlyFans empire gone dark. Her followers turned into spectators. When prosecutors described the relationship, they used the word toxic. That's generous. Toxic suggests chemistry gone wrong. This was anatomy gone wrong. He bled, she monetized, and the world watched. The final evidence entered into record was Christian's text message from February 2022. "Is love going to kill me?" It was rhetorical then, and it's literal now. The dead can't defend themselves. That's the problem with murder. The testimony becomes one-sided. What remains are artifacts, blood, data, bruises, and people pretending to interpret both grief and evidence. By the time 2023 arrived, the world had turned the Courtney Clenney case into entertainment. There were documentaries in pre-production, YouTubers diagramming stab trajectories, and podcasts with intros scored to piano in outrage. The victim became a story arc they assumed became a headline that still looked good in photos. But in Miami's courtroom, the story wasn't finished. Miami-Dade medical examiner was not swayed by social media narratives. The autopsy was mechanical in its honesty. A single deep stab wound to the upper chest, angled downward, perforating the subclavian artery and lung. It was not thrown from a distance, it was delivered by hand. Christian's fingerprints were absent from the knife handle. Courtney's were clear. There were no signs of defensive injuries on her body, no bruises, no choke marks, no abrasions consistent with struggle. The scene showed blood pooled near the kitchen island, droplets suggesting a slow collapse, not a fight. The investigators found what they expected. Evidence of intimacy turned weaponized. When questioned again, Courtney's story slightly shifted. She said Christian had grabbed her by the neck first, and then she grabbed the knife, to scare him. Later, she said that she threw it without thinking. Later still, that she didn't remember. Her memory, like most defense strategies, improved selectively over time. Technology doesn't forget, it just records in silence. Christian's phone became the prosecution's silent witness. Dozens of voice memos, text threads, and videos documented a year of volatility. In one, Courtney is heard shouting, "I hate you. I always give you everything, and you take me for granted," followed by a thud, the sound of an impact. In another, Christian whispered to himself, "I just want her to stop hitting me." They were small sentences, but together they dismantle an entire defense. The trial preparation resembled a Netflix pitch, meeting more than a legal proceeding. The evidence was cinematic. Elevator footage, 911 calls, text screenshots, and home security clips. The prosecution framed Courtney as the architect of escalation, charming, manipulative, and lethal when control slipped from her hands. The defense countered that she was the real victim, trapped in a cycle of abuse, vilified because she was beautiful, white, and digitally notorious. Every hearing drew cameras. Reporters camped outside the courthouse like it was a film premiere. Inside, her expressions alternated between trembling victim and stoic martyr. Jurors will one day decide which was real. In her few sanctioned phone calls, Courtney reportedly complained that the jail's lighting made her look awful during televised hearings. Vanity, it seemed, survived incarceration. The Obumseli family kept his memory alive in the only way grief knows how. Relentlessly. They launched a foundation in his name aimed at domestic violence awareness for men. It is demographic often ignored, mocked, or dismissed, but Christian's case forced an uncomfortable conversation. He had confided friends that he didn't know how to leave. "If I walk away, I'm abandoning her," he once said. His parents, immigrants from Nigeria, spoke publicly about the tragedy, about the double tragedy, losing a son and watching his reputation dissected online by strangers who knew nothing about him except for his girlfriend's follower count. "Every day I have to see her face on TV," his mother said. "My son's blood gave her more fame." In custody, Courtney's life becomes the opposite of what he had been. No phone, no followers, no filters, only time. The one currency that she had never learned to manage. Reporters from other inmates described her as quiet but calculating. She allegedly read self-help books and complained about food. Jail is rarely kind to those accustomed to designer kitchens. Her lawyers filed motions arguing that pretrial publicity had poisoned the jury pool. The judge agreed, but not enough to release her. She remains at the Turner Guilford Knight Correctional Center, awaiting trial, likely sometime in 2025. Her remaining defenders online still circulate edited clips to prove her innocence, as if cropping context could crop intent. The case became a Rorschach test of modern morality. People saw what they wanted to. Feminists saw a woman punished for surviving abuse. Men's rights advocates saw proof that male victims are invisible, and true crime enthusiasts saw content. Hey. Everyone else scrolled past. When did Courtney had built her fame by sharing everything. Every workout, every emotion, every glimpse of curated vulnerability. In the end, she shared too much. Her private brutality became public property. In court filings, prosecutors summarized the killing with surgical precision. The defendant inflicted a single, forceful stab wound after a verbal argument. The wound was consistent with an intentional downward thrust from close proximity. It wasn't cinematic. There was no slow-motion angles, no dramatic screams, just an argument, a flash of metal, and a life leaving a body. Christian died within minutes. Courtney survived. Not in the moral sense, but the biological one. Survival is a neutral word. Even as the case crawled toward trial, streaming platforms prepared documentaries. The thumbnails were predictable, her mugshot on one side and his smiling photos on the other, a knife in between. Aesthetic balance is easier than moral one. In some grotesque twist of a modern age, the murder scene became monetizable. Every clip, every analysis, every deep dive collected ad revenue. The same public that condemned her still clicked. Outrage is the internet's favorite addiction. Courtney once said during a live stream months before the stabbing, "I don't know where I will be in 5 years, but I want to be happy, healthy, and loved." 5 years later, she's caged, medicated, and awaiting trial for the death of a man who loved her most. Happiness is subjective. The irony is that both of them wanted control. She over perception and he over peace. Both lost it. The difference is that one stopped breathing first. The case of Courtney Clenney and Christian Obumseli remains pending, the sentence unwritten. But even if the court acquits her, history won't. The videos, the text, and the screams, they've already rendered judgment. Christian's last messages to her read, "I can only hope tomorrow will be better." Tomorrow came, and it wasn't. If there's a lesson here, and there usually isn't, it's that love without restraint eventually demands it. That beauty and cruelty can share the same mirror. And that sometimes the most dangerous weapon isn't the knife, but the conviction that you'll never be blamed for using it.